So today we are going to be working in my workbook called Onward to the Cross, which is a chronological look at Passion Week. We have done most all the chapters. We're down to chapter 9, which is the Garden of Gethsemane, which is on the Thursday night of Passover. So we're going to get there now. The Garden of Gethsemane, Matthew 26:30 through 56.
When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives.
Right. So the Mount of Olives, you probably can find that there, right near the Garden of Gethsemane. So who are they?
The 12 apostles.
And Jesus, of course. What have they
Yeah.
just been doing?
Passover supper.
Right. After the Passover meal held in the upper room, number 3, Jesus and his apostles traveled towards Bethany as they have done every night, which is on the Mount of Olives, or near them. Yeah. It is late Thursday evening. Make a line along the road from the upper room through the Kidron Valley to the Garden of Gethsemane. And that is a similar, like the Roman road of that time, by the way.
Then Jesus told them, "This very night you will all fall away on account of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee."
Right. And kind of remember this, because when we get to the next book, Galilee will be brought up a number of times, and the apostles don't understand to go there. They stay stuck in Jerusalem. And so Jesus has to meet them in Jerusalem, not Galilee. What did Jesus say was going to happen that very night?
You will all fall away on account of me.
Where would Jesus later meet them?
Galilee.
Right, which is actually not where he first meets them, but we'll learn that in the next story. What has to happen to Jesus before he can meet them later?
He has risen.
Right, he would have to be risen, but he's going to be struck.
Yeah.
The shepherd will be struck. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
think the apostles understood what he meant?
No, they do not understand Jesus will die.
They absolutely don't, which makes the story all the more convincing, because they absolutely refuse to believe it. If they did believe it, then people could say, well, they took the body to prove it. But no, they're huddled up in the upper room and everyone can find them if they wanted. So yeah, definitely they did not believe that that was going to happen.
Peter replied, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will."
Right. Typical Peter statement. I could even say that, feel like I would say this myself, I will be there for you. I will be there for you. Peter's the one apostle that impulsively speaks out often when Jesus is teaching, but he often voices what the others are probably thinking. He's considered the leader of the apostles. Let's check out other examples of Peter's boldness. Matthew 16:21-23. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, that he must be killed, and on the third day he'd be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." I'll let you read the next one.
Okay, John 13:5-9. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now, but I am doing what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well."
So he's always impulsive and he's always, exaggerating and being the bold one. So the question is, do you think Peter's boldness is a good characteristic or a bad one?
Oh, I think it's a good character. Like you said, he often voices his opinion because that's probably what other people were thinking anyways and not saying.
And somehow or another, this is a gift of his that Jesus especially likes, even though it makes him say things that are not quite appropriate for the time, because he's the leader of the apostles and he will be the leader of the apostles. And so you wonder, okay, Lord, he's just needing to learn how to be disciplined in his vocal things.
Yeah, saying what he thinks.
Right.
Truly, I tell you, Jesus answered, this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter declared, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And all the other disciples said the same.
Well, yeah. And so obviously, one of the things that I point out to everybody is, despite what we learn in school, roosters don't just crow in the morning. Now,
Oh, yeah.
my roosters do sing a song in the morning, but they crow all day long.
Yeah, I've heard that. And I thought, oh, that is not true. But see, you wouldn't know unless you had a rooster, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and we've had neighbors have had roosters, and it's like, oh man.
All night. Yeah. Some are more vocal than others, but yeah. Up to this point, being a follower of Jesus had not been difficult. He was a teacher that over 5,000 would eagerly listen to. He was a revolutionary that spoke against the Pharisees and Sadducees and spoke kindly to the tax collectors, the invalid, and the poor. Miracles happened in his presence. Many believed he was the Messiah that was promised, the king that would reign. Surely nothing could stand in the way of his rise to power. How many of the apostles did Jesus say would fall away from him that night?
All would fall away from him.
Right. How many times that night would Peter disown Jesus before the rooster crowed?
3 times.
Did Peter believe this would happen?
No,
Did the rest of the apostles believe that they would fall away from him soon?
no,
Who is
none.
the one apostle that's not with the group?
Judas.
Right. Yeah. So, um,
Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called
Gethsemane.
Gethsemane. And
Right.
he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray.
This is a picture of Gethsemane, by the way.
Oh, okay.
What time of day is it?
Uh, Late Thursday evening,
Right. What had they just been doing?
Passover supper.
Right. What did Jesus want to do?
He wanted to pray.
What did Jesus tell his disciples to do while he went and prayed?
Sit here.
After a long day and a large meal, the disciples sat down in the darkness in the garden, probably only lit by the moon and the lights of Jerusalem. Assuming they were safe from harm, what most likely would be the result?
They'd fall asleep.
Right? They would, yes.
He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.
Who did Jesus take with him further into the Garden of Gethsemane?
Peter, James, and John.
Very good. Yes. Which number 2 says? Who's the 2 sons of Zebedee, James and John? 3, what is Jesus feeling right at this moment?
Sorrowful and troubled.
And what did he want the 3 apostles to do?
Stay here and keep watch with me.
Right, because he wants to pray and he wants to have a close relationship with God, but he's afraid somehow that things will happen before he's finished talking to God.
Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. yet not as I will, but as you will.
Which really makes us realize that he's fully human, because that is often what we go through, that we see what's in the future for us, and obviously sometimes we're aware that, in front of us is the hangman's noose or, some other horrible thing. And, if it's possible, take this cup from me, God, but not my will, but your will. There may be a reason that you have to go through that, these things. So, but God, he is totally feeling it just the same as we would.
Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour? He asked Peter. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away a second time and prayed, My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done.
Yeah. How long had Jesus been praying?
1 hour.
Yeah. What happened to Peter, James, and John while Jesus was praying?
Sleeping.
Yeah, sleeping. What do you think Jesus meant by saying the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak?
They wanted to stay up and keep watch, but their body was too tired and they fell asleep. So that's
Right. They were too full of
their
food and they
body,
fell
the
asleep.
flesh,
Yeah.
was weak.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time and saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer.
So how many times did Jesus pray?
3 times.
Luke adds, Luke 22, 43, 44. An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweats were like drops of blood falling to the ground. Do you believe Jesus knows what's going to happen?
Yes.
Yeah, he does.
Yep. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. Going at once to Jesus, Judas says, Greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. Jesus replied, Do you do what you come for, friend?
Right. Now realize this is during the dark, so it isn't as easy to recognize different people. But he's going to recognize Jesus, so that's why he identifies him this way. He goes up and gives him a kiss. That way, the people know who to arrest because it's in dark. Even though they have their lights, sometimes it's really hard to see faces. Sometimes. What was the crowd that came with Judas armed with?
Yeah. Swords and clubs.
Yeah, why would they think they need swords and clubs to? Jesus has never been a violent person.
Yeah.
Who were the crowd sent from?
Yeah. A chief priests and elders of the people.
Right. What was the signal that the betrayer was going to use to identify Jesus?
The one I kiss is the man.
Yeah. What name did Judas call Jesus?
Rabbi.
And what name did Jesus call Judas?
Friend.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear.
What did one of the Jesus's companions do?
Reached his sword and struck the servant
Right.
of the high
John,
priest, cutting off his ear.
John 18:10 tells us that then Simon Peter, who had a sword, threw it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. So, so we know it was actually Simon Peter who did that. Do you think it was right for Peter to defend Jesus like that? Why or why not?
Yes, Jesus stopped it. How does one know what the right thing to do was?
Right. I mean, they came with clubs and stuff. Now, it's interesting, the apostles are carrying swords. We don't always know that they did that, but they were robbers and thieves on the roads and stuff. So,
Yeah.
if they're coming with clubs and swords, you would assume that you could fight back. Mm.
Put your sword back in its place, Jesus said to him, for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way?
Right. And Luke 22:51 tells us a little more. Jesus touched the man's ear and healed him. So, yeah, he said, put it back in your place. I could call legions of angels, and legion is thousand. So, it's like 12,000s of angels just to come to my rescue if I needed to. But the scriptures would not be fulfilled. As this has to happen as the way it's being done, which the apostles didn't fully get that until afterwards when he rose again, but took him a while.
Yeah. In that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
Yeah. He's not even supposed to put up a fight. Wait, we can't handle this. We figured we can fight our way out. But Jesus isn't even fighting. Oh my gosh, I'm not ready to be put on the cross as well, so they all leave.
Yeah.
So we come to our crossword. Number 2, what was the signal Judas used to identify Jesus?
Yes.
Yeah, number 5, John and James are known as the sons of.
Zebedee.
Yeah, and 7, what did Jesus do 3 times in the garden?
Pray.
1 down. The Garden of Gethsemane is on the base of the Mount of.
Olives.
And number 3, what were the disciples doing while Jesus was praying?
Sleeping.
Yeah. 4, who's the betrayer?
Judas.
And 6, Peter cut what off the servant of the high priest?
Ear.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let me stop the recording.